So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar, Geopolitical Shifts, Increase Complexity. How do you still effectively manage your early phase oncology trial? My name is Justina. I'm from Biomapa's business development team, and the webinar will be presented by our experts in the field. Just to give you information about the technical part, so at the end of the webinar, we will have a questions and answer session. So do not hesitate to write your question in the questions and answers box, which can be found at the very bottom of your page, of your website. Our experts would be happy to answer any question that you might have. Before we jump into the topic, I would like to briefly introduce our company. So Biomapas is clinical, regulatory, pharmacovigilance, and medical information solution provider for the global life science industry. Biomapas has been on the market for more than 20 years. Currently, we are covering more than 60 countries across all Europe, CIS, and MENA regions. The company has more than 100 customers and counts over 300 professionals in the field. Biomapas provides full clinical services from the study planning to the final delivery. Our clinical expertise ranges from first-in-human studies all the way up to post-marketing studies. We also have our early phase unit where we conduct patient and healthy volunteer studies. And Biomapas has a broad expertise spectrum in numerous therapeutic areas for pharmaceuticals, biologicals, and medical devices. So this was a brief introduction of our company. And now I'm giving the floor to our speaker, Regina Auškalnienė.
Thank you, Justina. Thank you, everyone. And hello, everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar. My name is Regina Auškalnienė. I'm briefly introducing myself. I'm a medical doctor, cardiologist. By training in the clinical research field, I'm already more than 17 years. And in my role as Chief of Global Clinical Research Officer of Biomapas, I'm overseeing clinical operations department, and also I'm overseeing our early phase unit called Bio1. So in our today's webinar, we will be covering several topics. We will be performing a short overview of oncology clinical trials, trends and challenges related to that, and also some geopolitical challenges that we are actually currently dealing with right now, and how do we would be happy to share with you some of our experience running oncology clinical trials. This will be shared by our very experienced project manager, some hints and tips how to manage the study budget and other things which are important to have in mind running your clinical trial. And also at the end of the webinar, we will let you know what topic in oncology field we are already thinking about preparing for our next webinar, which will also be happening soon. So oncology is indeed a leading area for innovation because of several reasons. There's a biggest investment in this field. Biggest number of the companies are working and performing research in oncology area, and the number of novel active substances which are being launched each year is quite big and increasing each year. And in terms of clinical trial activity, this is indeed a very busy area, and there is a big proportion of clinical trials which are in early phases. So let's jump on the next slide, Justina. Yeah, so briefly, let's overview what are the challenges in oncology drug development and specifically in the clinical trials phase. First of all, patient recruitment is indeed an increasing challenge because there is a robust number of ongoing clinical trials next to the rising number of approved treatments reaching patients. So this creates even further competition for eligible patients, which is not easy to solve overall. Oncology clinical trials normally last longer than other regular clinical trials and other indications, but recently with more and more coming accelerated approvals and accelerated approvals in rare diseases area, create a situation that many oncology clinical trials do not conduct all the phases. Unfortunately, even this is a really intensive therapeutic area for investigation, but probability of success is not big. However, oncology clinical trials have a tendency to become much more complex to deliver, and of course the costs are getting much higher. So that's also a pressure to the sponsors and all the stakeholders involved in the conduct of the clinical trials. Talking about complexity of the clinical trials, this is increasing really tremendously. The number of the procedures, the number of the endpoints, patient recruitment challenges, which we already touched a bit upon, requirements to the sites, and novel clinical trial designs are also contributing to this complexity of the clinical trials. And we know that even when registered, access to modern cancer treatment is quite uneven across the world in different countries. That depends on local situation, on what are the patient funds, their attitude and priorities, of course, financial situation of the country. So so access is clearly uneven. So returning back to clinical trial complexity, which is definitely increasing. In the next slide, let's see what is the science perspective. Biomappers as a company, we are working with many academic sites across Central and Eastern Europe, Western Europe also, former CIS countries, who are doing indeed a really great job trying to accommodate clinical trials in their regular clinical work with their patients. We also have our early phase unit, and this is from there, especially we have this first-hand experience and feedback from investigators, how their daily life in clinical trials look like. So most of the sites we see, especially in oncology area, they are managing usually several complex oncology protocols, and usually there are just a few patients in each because of the complexity. And for the sites, it's really hard to achieve effective and effectivity and quality performance in running clinical trials. Sites also are dealing, of course, like in many industries, but there are a lot of staff challenges. Not only how to squeeze in clinical trial procedures into their daily work, but also there are normally staff retention issues in big hospitals, lack of investigators and study nurses, lack of time to be dedicated for clinical trial related activities. Lack of time for the trainings and for various training on CRFs and other procedures and systems. And also sites have to pay attention to safety concerns, to clinical trial design difficulties and tight eligibility requirements. So indeed, we often in our team, we are discussing that, of course, everyone is talking about the patient centricity in clinical trials, But sometimes we really need to bring this site centricity into the view, because how to make the clinical trial user-friendly for the site, that is also a very important topic to address. So moving to the next slide, I would like to briefly introduce you our early phase unit called Bio1. This is where we believe that we are solving and providing solutions for the sponsors and for investigators in this unit. Since this unit is inside a large university hospital in Vilnius, and this is completely separated from daily clinical activities. And the site, despite the fact that this is inside the hospital, is fully dedicated for clinical trials, where the investigators can come and spend their time specifically on clinical trial related duties. So we will be touching further. I will hand over to my colleagues in the next slide. Moving forward, we would really like to share with you our experience in how we are managing our clinical studies and what is going on currently in our region, and how this is changing, and how clinical trials are changing currently related to geopolitical challenges that we are facing. And further, we will be talking about oncological clinical trials, lessons learned, importance of some lessons learned to be implemented into daily activities. So I will hand over the word to my dear colleague, Oleg, who is based in Kiev, actually. So Oleg, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Regina. Hello, everyone. My name is Oleg Kungurtsev. I'm head of clinical monitoring at Biomapas. With Biomapas, I'm about 3 years now, and I do have about 20 years experience in clinical trials, starting from CRA role and through clinical trial manager, project manager role. Now, I'm observing, let's say, kind of line management of our clinical operation team, CRAs, CTAs, coordinators, and dealing with overall oversight of this team. So if we move to the slide, definitely complexity for conducting ecological studies mentioned by Regina is not only the factors that impacts. We do have, let's say, within industry factors impacting us, but we faced just recently with huge two factors. This is COVID-19 pandemic situation, and right now, which impacts on us globally, let's say, from global perspective. And right after, at region level, we are facing a huge impact of this Russian invasion into Ukraine, and this invasion definitely somehow changing the landscape of clinical trials for Russia, for Belarus, for Ukraine, and for our neighbors, neighborhood countries. So this is definitely the root cause of this impact is quite different, for example, but the results are rather the same. For Russia, definitely it looks like everything works well, but we were observing a significant decrease of clinical trials, especially international clinical trials, because of sanctions. Russian sites are facing with just pharmaceutical companies shrink their business there, and their logistics issues appeared from the very beginning of March, and this trend is continuing. It's more and more complex to deliver study materials, to deliver IMP to Russia, and vice versa, to deliver biosamples to the central lab. So, and this caused some I mean, negative trend. And you can see that from statistics published recently by Clinical Trial Association in Russia, if we look at the ECA approvals issued in Russia and compare this number of approvals with the last year, you can see that from total number, we do have even increased number of approvals issued. But if you look at the structure of these approvals, you can see that most of the study and most of the increase was caused by local clinical trials sponsored by Russian sponsors, right? And we do have this positive trend also for bioequivalent studies because of regulatory requirements in Russia actually required to do these studies to have marketing authorization. But if you look at the international multi-center clinical trials, it is almost 30% decrease in approvals issued by competent authorities. And you can see that 111 studies were approved for the first half of the year. And if we go to the next slide, you can see that half of the approved studies not started or put on hold. This is a reaction of pharmaceutical companies to Russian invasion. And you can see that 18 out of 111 studies were suspended. So it is clear that they will not be in Russia. We do not have any data for 33 studies, but for 5 studies, there was some kind of potential start possible. So it means that the consequences of this invasion is kind of similar. The ongoing studies, enrollment put on hold, and this is happened not only in Russia, but also in Ukraine. For new studies, they are suspended or not started, and some of the pharmaceutical companies just waiting, but definitely we do have ongoing patients. We do have patients that need to be provided with treatment. And this is the main challenge currently in our countries. And yeah, I'll share our experience from first-hand experience, how we are dealing with it. Yeah, it is clear that once we have closed 3 countries, which represents, let's say, at the beginning of the year, it represents about 4% of the global number of recruiting sites. Definitely, the sponsoring company are looking for substitution for site studies substitution, and they're looking for neighborhood, because neighborhood countries may be compared in terms of enrollment potential, yeah, in terms of site allocation, etc. So this is something that we observing right now, and especially this is definitely over a kind of we can see for Poland, for Baltic states, for Georgia, and you will see the figures later on. Can you please move on? Yeah, this data actually was presented by FESI, data analytical company, and this is number of enrolling sites. And you can see from January to October, dramatic decrease in number, even twice decrease in number for Russia and Ukraine. Because of this, and you can see that increase in number of enrolling sites in Poland. So, and this is self-obvious that sponsoring company are looking for backup solution. Okay, if we look at next slide, yeah, and just show you Biomapa's experience. And this is our countries when we are operating, and we are just comparing a number of recruiting sites for Biomapa's data. This is just ranges we'd like to present you. And for Georgia, for example, you can see that we have twice more sites currently operating than it was in last year. And the same for for Baltic countries. So yeah, the same trend is observing. Can you please move to the next slide? Yeah, and just to share our experience, how we're dealing currently, how we're dealing with all these obstacles and challenges for conducting clinical trial currently in Ukraine. So definitely we're observing subject limitation factors, definitely the limitation to access to the site. So it may be physical access, it may be a loss of communication, a loss of possibility to reach out the investigator, for example. It may be subject relocation, and you heard that there are a lot of people moving from eastern part of Ukraine to western part of Ukraine and even abroad. So this means that we are losing these subjects from a site's location, and we need to deal with it. Difficult transportation, some logistics issues also observed, and significant break in some cases in treatment. Treatment continuation is very important in some conditions, especially for oncological patients, definitely. And as I mentioned already, not stable communication with the site. So how we will deal with these challenges? First of all, we think about patients, what need to be implemented in order to increase or improve patient compliance with the study protocol requirements and to make patient life easier. Definitely, this is decreased number of on-site visits. Wherever possible, the sponsors were introduced the models, and we can combine remote activities, we can combine remote resupply with on-site visit to the sites. Yeah, if we're considering subject transfer, there is certain steps we need to undertake for this transfer. It may be within the country, it may be abroad. Yeah, and we need to think about transportation if we are, let's say, transporting patient or subject from two sites. If we have one vendor who refused to provide these services, we need to think about backup solution. The same about IP, other study-related materials supply. Definitely, we should have some kind of alternative solution. Yes, and to provide the subject with contact details, not only one for one team member, as we used to have, yeah, for sub-investigators, for example, or for study coordinator, but to provide some kind of alternative connection solution to the subject. Next slide, please. And sites. Sites changes are pretty similar, but this is also site staff. We are observing that a lot of people from study team moved from site location, unfortunately. And for the first time, for the first few months, we're struggling to reach out somebody from the site personnel to figure out their situation. So right now, it is definitely much better, and sites kind of cope with all these challenges. Some people, some staff team member are returned, right? And for some of them, the remote working activities or a remote condition has been established. Lack of study materials and delay with resupply also, this was huge challenge in the beginning of the conflict, but right now it's much better because we identify an alternative solution for this transportation. So far we are dealing with this challenge very effectively, I would say. Difficulties with protocol compliance, yes, this is still challenge because of this situation. There are kind of uncertainties, and patient very often to miss visits and this miss study drug dosage, etc. And this needs to be taken into account. And this is rather straightforward. Recent challenge: power outage and not stable internet connection. So this impacts not only for communication, but definitely for IP assignment to the patient if, for example, there is no internet connection. So we need to think about alternative solution for this. And kind of mitigation plan we implemented right now. Definitely more frequent and close contact with the site study team from CRO perspective, from subject perspective. We do have study coordinators or study teams on duty, and the contact of this person is shared. The person may be not directly responsible for the study, but he or she is aware about to whom your request should be forwarded and addressed. Contact communication means some alternative solution, definitely. For example, for the patients, there is some agreement to share some social media pages of the PI sub-I. So if PI can publish any updates on his Facebook, for example, account, the patients may read it. Yeah, so it has been implemented, and actually it was quite successful. Maintain sufficient stock of study materials, say, and IP, also key factor, and sponsoring company very supported us in this case, because they re-established this is a threshold in IWRS, so increased the number of vials or whatever blisters for resupply to the depot, and from the depot to clinical site. And the final sponsor CRO challenges. This is more important, and probably more important and difficult to overcome challenge, right? Because we're dealing with data. We're dealing with data entry delay, data loss, and delay with data verification. And ultimately this is somehow impacts directly on data integrity. So we need to deal with this, and we need to implement remote. First of all, we need definitely for this particular challenge, we need to agree on what critical data is for particular study, what data must be in the database. Data verification, we need to agree how to verify the data, what other requirements, whether remote monitoring may be implemented, etc. Difficulties in study material supply, and this relates to safety as well, definitely. And this, for example, for lab kits resupply, for equipment, we were looking for local solution. We were looking for local lab establishing. We're looking for a local lab purchasing of study materials. So this is kind of self-evident actions to be taken, but believe me, during this first months, it was extremely difficult and extremely hard, because everyone was looking for the same. And for IMP, yes, with certain vendors, with certain even global companies, we have established a very reliable way of communication, and with Poland depot and Poland hub. So difficulties in biosample shipment to the central labs, again, local lab for certain analysis setup, and for the biosamples that must be delivered to the central lab, we definitely we're looking for alternative solution. I mean, whether samples may be shipped frozen, whether this cold chain may be maintained during the whole way of shipment to the lab. And financial difficulties, this is another part. So having said that, yeah, you understand how important is to prepare the study, how important to prepare the study budget, to plan the study, taking all these nowadays challenges into account. And I'm moving forward and yeah, just handing over Vladimir to present his part of the slide.
Okay, thank you, Oleg. Thanks for sharing this experience, quite challenging experience. Okay, so good day, everybody. My name is Vladimir Mukavoshik, and in my role as a head of a project manager here at Biomapas, I cover the oversight of this department activities of the project management department. I'm reviewing the processes, improvements, and I'm providing day-to-day support to project managers and to projects they're running. And due to this, I have a good deal of exposure to what we experience in our everyday life of our full scope projects running, including all achievements, challenges. And so with the next few slides, I would like to share with you some of our real life experiences that we learned in real projects and share some ideas how to make your study more efficient and less costly. So you will see it will be really, there's different aspects that you can cover, but this part will be mostly about how to save some money. And these items, they are mostly based on our early phase and in many cases oncology experience, because this is our priority. And this is like where most of our experience lies in. However, I'm sure you can apply this to different studies because they're really universal. You can think of applying them to any type of the study that you're running. Okay, so of course, the study phase, the size of the study, indication, complexity, they all will be the drivers for the study budget. And at the start of the study, you will get an idea how much this study will cost. So again, not the exact number, but an idea. It's 100,000, is it a million, is it a few millions? So you have a starting point, and then you can further break it down into the costs for different services. So like outsourcing to a CRO, to hiring a central lab, or to a pass-through cost, and pass-through costs like the ones that you pay on an actual basis, on a need base, like courier services, regulatory budgeted fees. And for this one, I specifically created a sub-bullet point for patient enrollment, because usually this is one of the biggest parts of the PDCs, and definitely you may want to find some savings in this part as well. Okay, and specifically to mention that we are at Biomapas very conscious that, while for CRO, these PDCs is rather kind of additional burden, additional work. So you process those monies through your financial department, you get them reimbursed from the sponsor. But we are very conscious that for a sponsor, these PDCs is a part of the study budget. And we are taking our best efforts to find the most effective solutions to avoid unnecessary costs here. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and here I have split potential areas for savings into a few categories. So they are listed on this slide, and I've done this basically for a structured approach to this question, because there is no limit to items you can think of, look through, and you will definitely find different, maybe smaller pieces where you can save monies. However, just based on our experience, if you consider these items at least, you should get noticeable decrease in your study budget figures. So, well, if you don't have time, just do this exercise and you will see the difference. Okay, and here's the list, and we will stop on all these items one by one as we move along through the presentation. So next slide, please. Okay, study design. It is the first thing to consider, really. And here I've kind of placed the questions that you may ask yourself, and it will give you an idea to start with. So at Biomapas, we are frequently approached by sponsors with a synopsis or even just a general study concept. So it's very rare that we have you just need to give a ready solution. And so we supported many sponsors and projects with refining their protocols to ensure they meet their drug development needs on one hand, but still they can be performed within the timelines and within the reasonable budget. So like if you have a, skyrocketing budget, then probably you can do anything you want, but there should be a balance. Okay, so one thing you may want to start with is to run through your protocol procedures. So basically the idea of this protocol visit schedule is to make sure that you have enough required data to support your endpoints. And you need to align them. So is it mandatory procedure for this endpoint? Really mandatory procedure? Do we do it with a reasonable frequency? Should we do it more often? Can we move something out of the schedule? Is it required at all after all? So it's probably not a secret, but sometimes when you give it a critical look, you all realize, okay, it's not really needed. Why do they do this? Like, why do we burden a patient? Why do we pay monies for this? And this is absolutely normal. The scientific team would want to have as much data collected as you can squeeze out from your study design. That's normal for them because they are really mostly scientific oriented. They don't think that much about monies. And this supports further development planning. And here it is the time for operations to do a reality check. Just a few examples. Again, maybe you experienced them already. So you may get 5 exploratory endpoints or even secondary endpoints, okay? They will ask you to collect biomarkers, metabolites, send them to 3 different laboratories for assessment. And I'm sure scientists will get tons of information from this data. However, and here comes this famous however, when you do a reality check, you see that your logistics become nearly impossible. You need to collect 100 milliliters of blood from 1 patient at 1 visit, and your costs are skyrocketing. Or you need to collect biopsies, many of them, different lesions, many times, the same issues, basically. So this is where we need to start talking to scientists to confirm if it is really needed. You're absolutely sure it's needed. And if it might be the case, it is the case in sometimes. So, but then you're prepared. You plan your budget accordingly, you prepare your sites, but if it's not really needed, you have the savings. And obviously it's much cheaper to realize this when you design the protocol during the development, rather than you hit the study conduct, you're already at the beginning, sites initiated, and you see, oh, come on, I cannot afford it. Okay, next thing here, services. Do you really need them all? And for oncology trials, this is one of the most common thing is this radiology assessments that you do to assess the project disease progression. No. And it's great to have this assessment, to be done in a centralized, non-biased, accurate way, using a central reader. But this famous but here, do you really need it? It is complex to set up. It is expensive. It's complicated for sites to understand, to go through all this procedure. And after all, for early phase, it is very likely it is a secondary endpoint. So it's not your primary goal to measure the disease progression in early phase. So that's where you come to a conclusion. Still, you may want to do this. There are different reasons, different indications, different goals to achieve. But okay, give it a second thought. And the same approach for all services. It's like safety testing at central lab. Do you want to do this? Again, the same. It will be non-biased. It will be centralized approach. You will get the same results, but maybe you would want to use local lab. It will save you costs and you will still achieve your goal. Or electronic patient questionnaires or diaries. So do we do this all now with the central services? Oh, we save monies now and use those monies at a later stage when these endpoints will be your primary endpoints. These will be your goals to measure your efficacy, not really like safety or those definition. Okay, and the last but not the least of this slide is to do the final run through your list from a patient and a site. You might see that it turns out that a patient and the site team may need to spend 24 hours at the site together to run through all different tests, perform procedures, comply with all different breaks. Okay, I need to wait 2 hours after my meal, or in 6 hours after the dose, I need to do something. Again, to give it a reality check. And if it's really needed, okay, go with it and prepare your sites, make it comfortable for patients, ensure reimbursement, consider hospitalization costs, all these things, and you will be compensated with better recruitment, site engagement. But if it's not really needed, let us skip a few, let's skip a few procedures in the middle of the cycle. So come on, you can change your on-site visits, replace them with the phone calls. It will reduce the burden for sites, for patients. You'll make your study more attractive and you will save costs as well. So give it a second thought. Run through this as like you are an investigator or patient. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, now we will take a look at the site selection and recruitment. And this question usually appears in every study. So this is universal for sure. And there is no right answer to this one. And what I wanted to highlight here is that it is just important to give it a second thought and make an informed and balanced decision using as much data as possible. So use global databases reports, giving you the historical data on how sites were really performing in this country with this indication. Use your direct communication with local sites. Talk to key opinion leaders. Actually, this is all that we do at Biomapas to support sponsor with this decision. And when we come up with our proposal, we're using this data. What country to go to at all? It's the same as before. There's no right answer to this. But give it a thought. Collect additional data. Country with hyper patient cost, potentially slow recruitment, busy site teams, but great experience, great equipment, simple logistics. So you can imagine what kind of countries I might mean here, versus lower per patient costs, big patient pool, motivated, engaged site teams, but lack of experience, complicated logistics. You might need to provide some equipment to them. So again, decide. You just need to have information, and then it's up to us to make a decision what works best for us. So at the Biomapas, we are definitely using our experience, our footprint, and strong presence in many countries to support this well-balanced decision. And generally, the idea is that there is always a solution possible. So you can always find a solution. That's guaranteed. You cannot deliver patient samples to a certain laboratory in time for some country. Consider a subset of patient population from countries where it's possible. Your statisticians will help you with this. Talk to your scientists. We've been through this. Okay. Not sure if sites will be recruiting with the timelines. You've got kind of a mixed feedback. So sites saying, oh, 1 patient in 3 months, but I don't know, this placebo arm. Okay, it is as it is, but you still need this placebo arm. Then have a backup country, identified and prepared projections. So you have a country ready, and if you see your recruitment doesn't go as planned, you include this country. So you know, if I'm including this country, I'm compensated for 3 months of enrollment. Again, just be prepared, make informed decisions, and that's it. Solution is always possible. Okay, and next slide, please. Okay, services providers, another item to think of, and personally speaking, one of my favorites. So these services, they could make your life a nightmare, or they might go unnoticed with all the processes just set up and working somewhere in the background with minimal oversight. And basically, you need to give it, again, a thought, the fit for the purpose approach, central laboratory. You can have a global laboratory with presence across all continents, huge selection of reports, integrations with all types of ECRFs ready, strict rules, and high cost. Or you can use some regional laboratory with simpler reporting systems, less experience, with different applications and templates, but they are usually more flexible, they are less expensive. So choose wisely what you need, what you expect, what budget you have. There are options available. Data management and statistics. And usually they should go hand in hand from operational perspective. It's obviously better to have these guys from the same provider, but it's possible to have them separated. And here's a variety of options available as well, from smaller, less advanced, cheaper electronic data capture systems to global industry well-known providers with numerous options, numerous reports. They can tell you reports on almost every data that you want. Again, measure versus your study needs. In most cases, you do not really need a sophisticated ECRF for a small phase 1 study, but you may struggle if you use like simpler ECRF system with, let's say, a study with 50 sites, 500 patients. You might have hard times during your data cleaning. Okay, statistics. What support will you need? Do you want some advisory in the protocol? Do you need them to prepare outputs for your data monitoring committee? Are you planning to do interim analysis? Okay, we're conscious we've been through different types of statistician services requirements, etc. So we always consider them. comparing the requirements with the experience of the service providers that we have. And other services design, I kind of touched this briefly, depends on your study design. Just, think, is it a nice to have, or I really need this? And then go with the way based on your decision. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and finally, looking from even larger perspective than one project, everything should be aligned with the whole study development program. This is rather better visible from sponsors' end. From our perspective as a CRO, we have just established efficiencies and cost savings that we apply for sequential studies, or studies that are run in groups or in programs, whatever you call it. So we definitely capitalize on assigning the same team. We are saving costs on trainings for this team. We're using the same study plans with minor modifications as needed, or we even saving on translations. We also have this experience. So we can really give better offer. We can save budget with this. And another point, it's definitely more efficient to use the same vendors, like so the same laboratory, same data management system, ECRF, for your continuous development program. So keep this in mind when you're planning your probably even the very first study. And we are very conscious that you really cannot always cover a marketing application, huge phase 3 study with the same resources, same procedures as you used for your early phase. But we have experience and we're confident we can still have efficiencies for early phase 1, phase 2 trial, which are being run sequentially or in parallel. And those savings, they are apparent. Okay, next slide. We are almost there. Here's the brief summary of what Biomapas can propose to support those efficiencies which I ran through before. We have very experienced medical writing team with a long story of successful protocol preparations. And we have established network of our medical experts, statistical experts, clinical pharmacologists. They contribute to our protocol development. So if there is a specific need for an input for some rare disease, or you have some tricky study design to cover, and you really want to ensure that you're not missing any endpoint, you have enough data for this, we have a solution here. We have a lot of real life experience within our team with numerous ready solutions available to cover difficult situations. And what I am specifically proud of as a head of this department, that the team has this everything is possible attitude, mindset. So there is always a solution. We are always flexible, cooperative, work together as a team, and we consider sponsors' needs really as our own. And we have established partnerships with a number of service providers covering key aspects of an early phase study, which is our expertise. So we have them assessed, qualified by our quality department. We have proven record of working with them. And this is for central laboratory, for data management and statistics. We have also solutions available if you have any specific needs like IXRS service, or you need a centralized IMP distribution depot, you need electronic patient-reported outcomes. We also have it. And we are continuously working on expanding our list. Now, we are looking for new partners. We are looking for better solutions. This never stops. Okay, next slide. Thank you. And this is really the final one for me. So it's just to share the number. We have nearly 90% of our clients returning to us to support them with running their trials or cover specific study needs. And now we are always too happy to work with our colleagues again. Thank you. That was all from me. And now back to Regina.
Yeah, thank you, Vladimir, very much for, and Oleg, thank you for all the content. We approach the end, what we have prepared for you today. My pleasure is just to announce that for the next webinar, we will be bringing our medical scientific expert on board, our colleague who is very much supporting us with our immune oncology projects, with protocol developments, protocol reviews. And we think to prepare the topic on and discuss at the somewhat beginning of February, we will be announcing, but the topic will be about the right endpoints for oncology clinical trials, discussing what that means, why it is important, and what needs to be kept in mind. So we are looking forward for really a good discussion here. So thank you very much for staying with us, and maybe there are some questions that maybe we can dedicate several minutes still to answer those. Justina, is there something?
Yeah, so we have several questions in our questions and answers inbox. So the first question is, in the beginning of presentation, you mentioned yellow phase site bio1 that you have. How this site gets oncology patients in? Regina, is probably the question for you. Could you please answer?
If this is from the beginning of the presentation, so indeed I've mentioned the site, early phase site, which belongs to the group of Biomapa's company group. This is called Bio1, but where the question is where it gets patients. This site, as I have mentioned, is located in the university hospital. Inside the hospital is large one, multidisciplinary, and this is serving the most of the country, our country, Lithuania. I think it's probably quite unique that this site is positioned inside the hospital on the 11th floor. And on the 10th floor, we have an oncology inpatient department. And we are partnering with investigators from this oncology unit. And they come and also they bring the patient from their large pool of the patients that they are regularly treating, overseeing. So that's one source of how oncology, especially oncology, we are not, this site is not fully focused on oncology. We are able to deliver different other therapeutic area patients when needed, but that's for oncology patient source. Also, this unit has good connections with other hospitals, other oncology units in Lithuania, which can refer patients to the doctors which have partnership and work at Bio1. Also, another source is that Bio1 acts sometimes as part of the other academic sites. So that if there are in one project, if there are several sites participating, Bio1 could be one of them, and that's how they provide the added value to recruit adequate number of the patients to oncology trials. As we discussed, we know that this is very often patient recruitment is a huge challenge. So that's important, and also maybe too important to note that this is the environment which for investigators is convenient, because this is dedicated for clinical trials. The clinical trial unit takes care about the source data, and that it would be comfortable for the patient and for investigator just spend time on clinical trial. Yeah, and that's and also in terms of patient safety, especially when we are talking about oncology trial and early phase oncology trial, a couple of floors down there is an intensive care unit, which also adds to our feeling of the patient safety, that we can take an adequate care of this patient. Yeah, so hope this answers the question.
Thank you, Regina. Yes. So the next question is, what patient-centric services your company provides?
Yeah, probably, yeah, I'll take this one. Definitely, we do have our approved vendor, and we experience these services. Definitely, this is kind of delivery to and from patient location. Huge, let's say, patient transportation, patient compensation, meals organization. This is delivery IMP, delivery by samples to from patient. delivery staff personnel, I mean study nurses to patient location. So all this, let's say, kind of scope of logistics related services may be organized by Biomapas.
Thank you, Oleg. One more question in our inbox. Can you use service or vendor that I prefer for my study?
Definitely.
Yeah, I think this one. Yeah, like if you want, or I can take this one.
Yeah.
Vladimir, you take this one.
Okay, struggling a bit with my camera. Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned, we usually we have ready solutions and we have some strong partnerships already established, or we have some solutions that we can propose maybe for less frequent services, but we are always open to cooperate with a service provider that you have, that you prefer. Maybe you have a history working with those providers, you were happy with that. So absolutely fine. We can accommodate and we can be flexible with this. Thanks.
Thank you, Vladimir. And one more question, which oncology area your company has most experience in? Regina, this is probably your question.
Yeah, I can take this one. So, so strategically, some time ago, we have decided to be more focused as a CRO. So we are in short to answer this, we have most experience and we are focusing on oncology, solid tumors area. Not really hematology, not hematological cancers, but still that is solid tumors and everything what's related with immune oncology. Yeah, that's.
Thank you. And we still see some questions coming in, but we are running out of time. So if you have any more questions, please email us to our mailbox, bd@biomapas.com. So thank you everyone who attended. I hope you benefited from our experience and we wish you a nice day, a nice afternoon.
See you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.